I'm Travis, and I'm a video game nerd.
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a book nerd.
And we like to share our nerdy nonsense with each other.
This week, we read the New York Times bestseller, That's a Great Question, I'd Love to Tell You, by Elyse Myers. Welcome to Books and Video, babes. Let's get into it.
Okay. No, you start.
Oh, okay. At the beginning of the book, Elyse talks about her neighborhood during Halloween. And she talks about how she knows the neighborhood well because, well, actually, she doesn't know it super well because she doesn't go door to door selling the magazines or the Christmas paper or whatever. She's too shy for it. And so her parents have to shell out a bunch of money. Did you ever do the door-to-door salesperson scam that was kids' fundraisers?
I did, and I feel like it was some of my first exposure, at least my earliest remembered exposure to just like such intense social anxiety. But also, now that I think about it, it was some of the first experience that I had with minority individuals, because this was in California. And at the same time, like most of the people that I saw at church were white, but most of my neighbors weren't necessarily. And so it was interesting because they'd open the door and I'd smell all sorts of different smells that I hadn't smelled before, typically smelling really, really good, like, what are you making? But sometimes there's language barriers and stuff like that. But overall, I never really felt comfortable with it, and I don't think that I was ever going to be successful at that.
That's fair. That's fair. I had a really good neighborhood growing up where we knew a lot of the people. My parents had lived there by the time I was born for probably 20 years minimum. So we knew the neighbors really well. So I knew which ones I could scam into buying whatever we were selling that time. And honestly, to some extent, I loved knocking on doors. I'd find excuses to do it. I know that sounds so weird knowing me now, but I took it upon myself to sell peaches from our yard. I took it upon myself. Me and my friends decided to go trick-or-treating the day after Halloween to con people out of their extra candy. We were like, do you have any extra Halloween candy? Can we take it off your hands?
Honestly,
yeah,
they're like, please take it off our hands.
So much candy. It was awesome. Best November 1st ever. So I was all over the neighborhood all of the time, which is so contrary to who I am now, where if someone knocks on my door, I would rather die than answer it.
That's fair. That's fair. You and I were very different kids.
We were. I feel like we were actually opposites of who we are now as children. That I was more like how you are now. You were more like how I am now.
Yes and no. I still don't see myself as somebody who's going to go knocking door to door if I can help it. So it's a tricky thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Elyse talks about with her two friends that she went trick-or-treating with.
Yeah.
Just being there to be the third friend. Have you ever felt like you were just there to be the third friend?
Never with anyone my age. I think that only really happened if I was like hanging out with my siblings' friends, which didn't necessarily happen very often, but sometimes it would. And so I'd be hanging out with these kids that were older than me or younger than me, and it kind of felt like I was just tagging along. But I feel like I generally felt like an equal among people my age, at least when I was like a very young kid, not maybe as a teenager. I don't know. What about you?
I feel like threes are really hard. I never was very successful at threes. I'm super good at one-on-one. You add in a third person and I suddenly don't know who I'm supposed to be. My role becomes really, really confusing to me. Because I think to some extent I have a different version of me for every person that I meet. So yeah, I never really was a good third friend because I just got confused and didn't know how to be that third friend.
That's maybe a beneficial thing to have because then you were never like put into that third wheel position.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Or never recognized that you were in the third wheel position.
Also possible. I do feel like potentially though I put other people into that third wheel position
inadvertently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Primarily because I didn't have friends. I had boyfriends.
Yes, that you did.
And still, to this day, this is my guy. Did you do sleepovers as a kid? Elyse talks about being invited to this sleepover and wanting to go because it meant that she'd have friends, but not wanting to go because that meant she'd have to go to a sleepover.
Interestingly, when I think about sleepovers as a kid, all I can really remember is my mom being so apprehensive about sleepovers ever happening. Her basic logic there was like, if someone else's kid was at my house and like something happened, and even if it was completely out of my control, like I would never forgive myself. And she kind of like vice versa that for like one of us being at somebody else's house. And so like we'd sleep over when we like went to visit family and we were at cousin's house, but that would like doesn't really count. Your parents are under the same roof typically. No. I think it happened once or twice, but I think that it was extremely rare. And I think that when I was much, much younger, I probably felt left out when I couldn't do it. But I think it didn't take until a very late age for me to be like, I actually like my own bed. I like the comforts of my own home. What about you?
So I slept over a lot, honestly. Specifically, I had this best friend actually in the neighborhood, Sarah Bergstrom. She lived down the street from me. And we would sleep over at each other's homes like all the time. And I always felt, well, I didn't feel bad at the time. I feel bad now looking back on it, but she wasn't allowed to sleep over on Saturday nights unless she came to church with us on Sundays.
Gotcha.
That was the rule. And so she was coming to church with us just all of the time and like borrowing my dresses. And it was a really fun thing. Conversely, I couldn't sleep over at people's houses on Saturday night because we had church on Sunday. So like there were certain sleepovers that I didn't actually get to sleep over.
That you would have liked probably to have participated
But I
in.
usually did late nights. Those nights, like my parents would let me stay out until 10 or 11, even when I was fairly young.
Yeah.
And then they just picked me up which was kind of nice, honestly, because the worst part of a sleepover, in my opinion, especially with like a big group, I love one-on-one sleepovers. Once you put me in a group, I get weird, and I recognize that about myself.
But the worst part
of group sleepovers is when it's kind of time that people want to go to sleep and there's at least one person who's like, let's never sleep again. And if you fall asleep first, you're the loser. And
often they don't even have a good idea for something to do while you're still awake.
No.
They're just like, I don't know what I want to do, except I don't want to sleep. And so I'm going to make it my mission to not allow you to sleep.
Yes. And that always sucked because I am a sleeper. I enjoy my sleep. Leave me alone. Don't draw on my face if I fall asleep.
I love that.
Sleepovers, man. Good times.
You could fall asleep in any environment too. So that is a real risk.
It's a real risk. That was terrifying to me because I would fall asleep. I fall asleep deep. People were going to draw on my face.
The only reason our kids haven't drawn on your face is that I exist, I think.
I think that's really very fair. Do you have any distinct childhood memories of anxiety? I think it's really interesting in the book because Elyse has these very distinct memories of anxiety throughout her childhood. Does anything stick out to you?
A lot of my anxiety centers around, I think, certain activities that I didn't want to do. So I've never liked sports, never been good at sports. There's just not an aggressive bone in my body when it comes to most sports, especially if you have to like touch anyone else. Like basketball, nope. Soccer, nope. Football, absolutely not. Ultimate Frisbee, you're not supposed to touch anyone, and so I can kind of get into it. But like otherwise, if I have to touch somebody or if somebody might touch me, I'm like, you can just have the ball. I don't care. And so most of the anxiety situations that I can think of involve me being in a situation where I've been kind of locked into sports or where it's presumed that I'm going to participate in sports. And so I have to decide like, okay, do I try, fake it, hate myself the whole time and just hate the whole of the situation and probably dislike everyone involved? Or do I try to get out of it somehow? And so most of them are like that. Every once in a while, I don't know. I've got like weird hearing issues, I feel like, where I need people to repeat themselves many times. And so I have a couple of weird memories of like somebody asking me a question, thinking that they said that they asked one question, and then I respond to that question, and then they're like, and then they ask what I swear is like a completely different question from what I thought that they said. And then I just felt like terrible and just, I would like get curled up into a ball and my stomach would hurt about it. But for the most part, like I think it was mostly around sports. What
So
about you?
PE was a nightmare.
PE was and wasn't, because PE was also full of other kids that didn't want to be there and did not participate. Let's be honest. Like once a week you ran the mile or whatever, and like 20% of kids actually ran the mile.
Fair enough.
What about you?
So as I was reading the book, I had this memory come up that's really distinct. In 5th grade, I was in Miss Hawkins' class, and Miss Hawkins was dating an actor. Not like a famous one, I don't think, but we were close enough. Growing up in Southern California, we were close enough to Hollywood that actor was like a viable
Possible
career.
For sure. Yeah.
And Miss Hawkins was dating an actor, and we were doing Cinderella for our 5th grade play. And I was Cinderella, which was very exciting for me because it was by vote, and my whole class, I mean, I don't know how much of the class, but I had the majority vote to be Cinderella.
Aww.
Which is going to be a feather in my cap forever.
That's the winningest win.
Right?
That's so great.
But so we had this actor boyfriend. It's really weird to me, actually, when I think about it now that
He was involved in your life at all?
yeah, but she'd bring him in to help us because he was an actor and we were acting. And I remember I really like to please people. I really like to do well. And I remember he gave me some constructive criticism on one of the scenes where I, as Cinderella, was cleaning the floor. He was like, you need to look a little bit more tired, a little bit more run down.
Sure.
And that stressed me out so bad. That was the only like constructive criticism that he gave me. And I was like, I'm going to do a bad job. I haven't done it. And we had little note boxes for everyone. I think probably to prevent us passing notes like during class, we had these note boxes so that we could put notes in for whoever we wanted. And while Mr. Actor Man was there, he had a note box. This is so embarrassing.
Who is it? What's he in?
I don't know what he's in,
I'm
but
just kidding.
I must have sent him like 15 to 20 notes about how stressed I was about this. And after every note, I was like, this is a bad idea. And then I would just get anxious about it again or have like a different clarifying question. And so I'd put another one in the box and another one in the box. And like, I knew that it was so dumb and I knew that I was going to regret it. And I couldn't stop myself from like continuing to ask this strange man, for advice. And I don't know if Miss Hawkins actually delivered all of those. It was never brought up. He never brought it up with me, which I was so grateful for.
She like sees your 15 notes. She's like, I'm not going to read all these. She probably just has a crush on my actor boyfriend. I'm not going to pass these along.
And I did not. I wanted to be the best Cinderella.
No offense, actor boyfriend.
He was, I don't know. I was a child. I'm sure he was a handsome man,
Yeah,
but he was a
sure.
man.
Yeah.
Like a grown man.
No, I know.
Okay. Just making sure. Anyways, that's one of those times where like anxiety so took over my entire self that I could not help myself. And it still is so cringy to think about.
It's so interesting though, because as we were reading this book, there were many moments where Elyse is describing being in a situation where she can't stop herself. And, you know, we all experience some level of anxiety in certain situations and everything, but I think this specific side effect of anxiety is something that I don't have any memory of ever experiencing. And so like, it's interesting hearing you describe this, because this would definitely be like, I relate to Elyse Myers because, and like, I don't see this being a thing that you like are still doing or that's ongoing or whatever, but like you have this very distinct memory of like, I was so anxious, I could not stop myself.
So just to put that into perspective for you, that's called a compulsion.
Oh.
I mean,
I'm learning, y'all.
typically referred to as a compulsion. I know I have OCD. It's not mentioned directly in Elise's book, but she has mentioned it in like Reels and YouTube and stuff that she has OCD. And I do think that there is a compulsive nature that happens with OCD that takes that anxiety and turns it into an action. So
It's interesting because I feel like I see myself in moments where I'm experiencing anxiety and my instinct is not to continue. It's almost to like cut off. Just like disregarding any situation or any side effects of that, right? It could be super awkward. I could be in the middle of like explaining something, realize that like I'm experiencing that extreme anxiety and then just cut myself off, you know? So interesting.
that must be nice. I would love to cut myself off. There's a chapter about the game 7 Minutes in Heaven. And I know that you were the sweetest, little prudiest boy. What were you thinking during the 7 Minutes in Heaven chapter?
I'm always fascinated by depictions of this game, 7 Minutes in Heaven, because it's, for some reason, it's always 7 minutes and it's always advertised as being in heaven. You see it in TV and in movies and in books like this one and everything. And I'm basically always fascinated by these depictions because almost always there's one extremely anxious child that's in that situation. Maybe 2 anxious children, but there's at least one, you know. And that's something that I never experienced. And I have to imagine, like, I'm kind of a literal kid person. Was a literal kid.
I was like, you're not a literal child.
And I would imagine that in that situation, like, I would just talk the whole time. And I would just kind of like try to break down whatever anxious walls existed, unless I had like an extremely strong personality in the other person that was just like, no, we're gonna kiss. And then I'd be like, which probably still wouldn't have happened, honestly. What were you thinking about?
So I was thinking about, she has this inner turmoil because it's a friend that she loves as a friend.
Marley?
Yeah, Marley. That she both wants to kiss and does not want to kiss. And I was thinking about my 8th grade boyfriend, Kellen. I broke up with him because I wasn't allowed to date. Shut up. We were 14. It's fine. Anyways.
It was love.
It was not love.
No, it was not.
But it was puppy love. But I remember at my going away party, because I moved at the end of 8th grade, at my going away party, we had a song that we had slow danced to at a party at his house. And my friends all turned on the song and they were like, go slow dance with Kellen. And I was like, if I go slow dance with Kellen, I think Kellen is gonna kiss me. And I don't know that like I want that to be, because I was moving away, I don't think that I want that to be how my relationship with Kellen ends, is on this kiss. Like, it would have been one thing, I think, at a different point. For the record, relationship is a really strong term for
what it was.
We never held hands. I don't think we like hugged while we were officially dating.
No physical contact
There
ever
was
occurred.
none. So a kiss would have felt really extreme at the end of all of that to like finish out. And so he was outside where the music was playing and I didn't go outside. Like, I straight up was like not doing that.
Dang. And that's when his villain origin story started.
That's when his villain origin story started, for sure. So like I get what Elyse was feeling. That like, because I did like Kellen. Had I thought about kissing Kellen before? Absolutely. But
How much did you think about it?
I don't want to
I'm just
talk
kidding.
about that. That's weird. I was a child.
You were a
Stop
child.
it.
Yeah, it was just kisses.
It was just kisses. Anyways, you so derailed that.
I'm so sorry. I do that sometimes.
I didn't want our relationship to change. I wanted to be able to remain friends with him because if we kissed and then I moved away, it would be weird. So, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's fair.
Let's talk panic attacks. Do you... Let's talk panic attacks. Elyse has a panic attack in the book.
Just one?
I mean, probably a lot. But she only describes, I think, one as a panic attack.
Yeah.
And she has someone there to help her kind of get through it. And it's actually a really cool story. Read the book. Read the book, guys. But I specifically, I think I managed to not have panic attacks in front of you for a while. But do you recall the first panic attack that I had after we were married?
Yeah, so let me set the scene. It was our first Sunday back at home post-honeymoon. We were getting ready for church. I'd gotten dressed, which, like, to be fair, for men, dressing for church, super easy, right? Like, white button-up shirt and a tie, some slacks, good to go. And you were trying to decide what you were going to wear to church, and it seemed as though everything that you tried on you thought looked terrible on you. And it's really interesting when I look back at it because, like, I don't think I handled it, like, very poorly, but I definitely didn't handle it well. Like, I wasn't upset at you. I was patient with you, but I didn't recognize it as a panic attack. And even if I had, even if, like, somebody vocalized, like, that's a panic attack, I definitely would not have known what kind of interventions you're supposed to do for that situation. I now kind of know, like, more or less, although I don't have a whole lot of experience with that because you don't have them as often in front of me. Maybe in general, I don't know. But you were freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I was a little bit struggling myself because I was just like, what's the big deal? Just, like, throw on a dress. You have all of these dresses. You look fantastic in all of them. What is the big deal? And I don't know if it was just, like, a mixture of, like, well, everyone's gonna know that we had just gotten married and I want to, like, look my best with my brand new husband, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a really interesting, like, yeah, it's kind of a, like, landmark moment, I feel like, in our relationship and in our marriage.
It definitely was. I don't feel like we talk about it very often, if ever. So I'd love to clear up some of that for you if you'd like. So for a little bit more context, that was a really long pause. Sorry. For a little bit more context, we were living with my parents right after we got married. We got home from our honeymoon and we're living with my parents in the home that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So these people who we were going to church with knew me from literal infancy. So I was nervous. And Travis and I got married less than a year after I broke off an engagement with someone else. I was 20 years old when we got married, so fairly young.
And I was 22.
You were 22. So it's not like he was ancient either, but he wasn't having anxiety. I just felt like I had to prove so much. I had to prove that I was an adult now. I had to prove that I made the right choice in my partner, because I had made the wrong choice for a minute with my last partner before you. And it all just felt so heavy that I had to put all of this into what I was wearing. Because if what I was wearing wasn't perfect, then they would they wouldn't know because they wouldn't know that something was amiss because nothing was amiss, but they would assume that something was amiss. If we came home from our honeymoon and I didn't look radiant and excited about my decisions and
If I was even 2% disheveled.
yes, exactly. And I was at least 2% disheveled.
I mean, at that point, because of the panic attack, sure.
And I remember sitting in my bedroom, my teenage bedroom, and childhood bedroom. I had slept in this room for years and years, and sitting in the closet that I had used as a young adult and a child, and just crying. And I felt so dumb. It was so little. I knew that it was so little, and I knew that I was so embarrassed that my brand new husband was seeing me like this. But again, like, I could not stop. I could not just put on clothes and go to church. And I think that that's one of the things that I just adore about Elyse's book, is that it makes me feel not so alone in that.
That's fair. You want to know something interesting about her panic attack that she describes? That it was like, that Liz would totally do that.
What?
So at some point, what's his face is like, I think trying to do the whole like name however many things, you know, talk about normal things and kind of like help them bring them back down to grounded reality. Mm-hmm. And at some point he says like blah, 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 and it's Wednesday or something. And she corrects him. She's like, no, it's Tuesday. And I thought that was so funny because I was like, that's totally something that Elizabeth would do. And like, I don't bring that up because like, it might sound like an accusatory thing to bring up, like, oh, even in a panic attack, you're correcting somebody. But I think that it's good for the other person to see that like, okay, they're still in there, you know, like that's still them. They're not completely all the way gone, because I think that like, if I started saying things that were like objectively false and you were just like okay with it, then that would be like very scary in a very different kind of way. You know, I'd be like, oh, there's something like cables have been disconnected in her brain at this point. And that would be scary.
I thought it was really interesting. I was super curious whether he did it intentionally or not.
Yeah, we don't know.
Because what a great way to pull someone out of a panic attack. Because if you can be panicking like that, but be right about something, that there's something that's really good about that feels really good about that.
Yeah.
To be like, I am so losing it, but at least I know what day it is.
Speaking of being grounded, we're going to take a snack break. We'll see you in just a minute.
Snack break, snack break. Talking about the factory reset. Which is a concept that Elyse talks about when she goes to school, to college, her community college.
Yeah.
She talks about how, you know, in high school and elementary school and all of those years before, she carried with her the burden of being who she was and everyone knowing who she was. And so going to community college was this chance for a factory reset, and she could suddenly live up to all of her potential. She'd make friends, and she'd be great at school, and she'd understand what was going on socially and academically and all of these things. And the factory reset didn't work for her. But I'd love to know your thoughts on a factory reset.
So I thought that this person was interesting. I don't remember wanting anything like this, which is interesting because my parents were in leadership positions in the church. I, like you, grew up almost entirely in like one place. And so everyone knew who I was and everyone knew who my family was and all of that. I don't remember, though, feeling, at least towards the end of my time in high school and the end of my time at home pre-college, feeling weighed down by anything or feeling like I was stuck in any kind of way. What I remember looking forward to in terms of college was like, I'm going to have my own space, which means I can do whatever I want, which did lead to some like pretty bad decisions in terms of time management and like being a good student or more not being a good student. I ended up on academic probation my second semester. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, I don't remember wanting that reset. I also feel like I do an okay job of kind of looking for those small resets in the day-to-day life, basically. What about you?
Oh, I totally relate to the factory reset. Going to college, I was going to be a whole new person. And I was going to be able to be whoever I needed to be. And oh my gosh, college hit me so hard. Moving from California to Utah for college, having grown up almost entirely in California, 3 years in Arizona, but never experiencing winter, and then having winter be a thing that happened to me. It was so bad. I wish that I guess there's a story to explain it. I had a roommate. We're still friends to this day. Clara, she's amazing. She will tell you that there was a period of time where I slept for 3 days straight, and she would come into my bedroom just to make sure that I was still breathing and alive because she was worried that I had died.
Seasonal affective disorder, everyone.
Seasonal affective disorder. So my factory reset, technically I did have a factory reset, but I turned into a lemon. We factory resetted and it went so poorly.
That's a hard reset.
It was a hard reset. And I feel like, I suffered depression in high school to a certain degree. The depression that I suffered in college was worse in certain ways, better in certain ways, but worse in that there wasn't a specific reason for it. There were things going on in high school that I was like, yeah, I should be depressed right now. But in college, there wasn't a reason for me to be depressed. And so it was really difficult to be depressed when I was like, oh no, the sun's gone. I'm just sad and I don't want to be alive. That was, I don't know where I was going with that. It was just hard. It was hard. And I feel like it took a long time to come out of it because there wasn't a solution. Not that there was a solution to the high school stuff, but there was more resolution, I think, in certain aspects. And even that, I'm still honestly resolving. But I think I struggled with a lot of depression, got engaged when I probably shouldn't have. And it was all just kind of messy until I met you. And then things just changed. And that, if I was to say that there was a positive factory reset for me, it was meeting you.
Huh. That's fair. That's cool. I'm glad I could be your positive factory reset.
Me too. I love that.
Things definitely became better for me too when I met you. I think that there was not like such a dip and then rise, like there were things going on and like there definitely was a rise, but it wasn't like a trough,
Yeah.
So.
What are your thoughts on the French being pure art and more attractive than we Americans are?
So I have a more like commoner's experience with France than I feel like she does, because was she only ever in Paris, living in Paris? It sounds like.
That's my understanding, that she was doing a semester abroad.
It's kind of like if you were a foreigner and you came to live in the States and let's say you only ever lived in LA or Miami or New York, you're going to see these people who are in those situations where like they kind of have to stay on top of like their looks and their physical appearance. They have to stay on top of like the corporate ladder or whatever, and so you're getting a very specific subset of the population. I spent all of my time basically in a whole bunch of different cities, some of which you have heard of, like Marseille, some of which you have
Marseille, for those of you who might not understand a French accent.
Some of which you probably have not, like Bayonne, which is in the southwest of France. And so I was around a lot more like common French people. That being said, like there was a certain kind of like beauty that was like, foreign is the right word, right? It was foreign to me. There was a beauty as well as like a way that many individuals would kind of hold themselves, but also at the same time, because of like, I was a missionary, and so I was spending time with all sorts of people. Because of that, I was exposed to even more like poorer people than I ever had been exposed to, right? And so did I see like the really, really nice side of things? Yes. Did I also spend time with people in apartments where these people were so heavily addicted to nicotine that they didn't own a single thing, because that they had sold everything to feed this addiction, and it smelled awful in their apartment, and they were like absolutely down on their luck, and we were just there to do whatever we could to help them. Yeah. But I don't think that's really the kind of beauty that Elyse is describing. She might have had experiences like that, but she doesn't, I think, portray them in the book really. And so you get a different kind of people in Paris. You have now been to Paris.
I have, yes.
And I have been to Paris a couple of times, and I definitely see how that is the case in a place like Paris, where again, like, that's going to be among the places to live in France, one of the most, if not the most expensive place to live in France. You're going to have people that really have to keep on top of things to a degree that people in surrounding cities and in the middle and rural towns like don't have to keep on top of. And so there's a bit of that. And so like, I totally see what she's saying, especially too, because of like all of the high culture when it comes to like the literal art and the delicious food and the public transit system that actually works unlike any public transit system that we have in the States. And so it's a very foreign thing, obviously, for, I think, any American. But also she did live there, which I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of jealous of in a way. Obviously, I lived there too, but I was a missionary. And so it's like a very different, you experience life very differently as a missionary. And so, yeah, I don't know. How would you, having been to Paris, how would you like... What is your experience there?
I don't know. I don't know that I could tell you what I thought of a single person in Paris. We went together just last May, and
trip of a lifetime.
Trip of a lifetime. It was just the two of us. We left our kids here in the States, and I don't think that I could tell you what a single person other than you looked like the entire time. I mean, not the entire time. In Paris, at least. I think I was just really focused on my time with you. And so I can say, for a fact, Travis is hotter in Europe. I don't know. Is
it like the lighting or?
I think the confidence with which you were in a foreign situation, because I do not speak French. I understand some French, but also if you speak French to me, I will immediately forget everything that I knew if you ask me a question and just look at you like, what are they called? A meerkat. Just on alert, but not dead eyes. And so there was something really attractive about seeing you speak French, about people assuming that you were French. That was really cool. That's just very attractive to see you, you know.
French passing,
yeah. And so like, I get it, because if you are French passing, then the French are delicious.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like this is a fairly sidebar conversation, but so many couples that we have known did not travel as just the two of them during their marriage until like all of their kids were completely grown up and out of the house, until they were empty nesters basically. And by the time they got to that point, they like don't even know how to travel, just the two of them. We travel also with our kids when we can. And I do want to acknowledge that like traveling is certainly a privilege. Not everybody has the ability to do so.
For sure.
And at the same time, I'm grateful that we don't spend money on certain things so that we can spend money on travel, because the experiences that Elizabeth and I have just traveling, just the two of us, we go to New York pretty often. We've now been to Europe together. We've done a couple of other things here and there. Those experiences are so important for reminding us of like who we are as a couple, we're also parents, and that there's no getting away from that. We love our kids and we love spending time with our kids. But in terms of like our relationship, it's so important to like revitalize that and remember why we chose each other, and not just remember why we're choosing each other every day in the midst of all of the chaos, but like remember why we chose each other in the first place. And so I would say that you were more beautiful in France as well.
Stop.
Because there was like that load off of, I think, both of our shoulders of like the regular day-to-day life, as well as like being parents, which motherhood has never looked more beautiful. And I think that, I don't know, when a person is more relaxed, it's much easier to connect with them. And that's something that we definitely get when we go on vacation, which is funny because like we don't go and like lay on beaches. No, like we get stuff done. And so, but there's still relaxation along the way.
For sure. I liked the tangent. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
So moving on to Terrence and the rose metaphor.
Oh my gosh.
How I read that and was like, when Travis reads this, he's gonna be so angry. Tell me about your thoughts.
This is the kind of conversation that I hear from other women that men will have with them, and I'm baffled every time, just completely baffled. And I want to say I don't mean baffled like I don't believe them. I do believe them, but I think that like I'm baffled because I do believe them and because I believe that these things are happening. It blows my mind that sweet little Terrence thought that that was any of his business. And one thing I will say, I love the way that she talks about it, because like she's not just deer in the headlights the whole time and just kind of like putting up with it. Like she's talking about on the way, like throughout the story is like, this is none of your business. I don't want to talk about this. Why are you bringing this up? And so like, good for her. That's awesome. I love how she was like totally willing to like make it weird as well in certain parts of that situation, because like I think that that's totally what you should do, is like don't be afraid to be weird, especially like she's describing too, like, you know, this is like a perfect crime kind of situation where they're like totally alone. It's nighttime. It's just her and him and his car, I think.
No, she had her mom's car.
Okay, she had her mom's car.
But her mom doesn't know that she has her car.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't understand why men have the audacity to talk about these kinds of things. I don't get it. I don't know where it comes from. And it's funny, right? Because there's also that moment where she kind of throws it back to him. Mm-hmm. And his response is like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And I think that sets me off maybe more than anything else, is that there's this ingrained hypocrisy. There's this like standard that is put on the woman that is not put on the man. Mm-hmm. I think because like, as bad as it is that he brought it up at all, I feel like if I had even the notion of the kinds of ideas he was bringing up, which I don't, but even if I did, as soon as someone turned it back on me, I feel like that would give me the opportunity to be like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. This isn't fair. This isn't equal. And that's not how things work. But his response was just like, well, that isn't how it works. And he doesn't back down at all. In fact, he keeps going and talks about horrifying things to ever bring up with a first date ? If that's even
unclear.
What it was. Yeah, there's a lot of that in the book, I feel like.
For sure.
And so I just got to say, like, props to Elyse for handling it so dang well, because that's an awkward, terrible situation to be in. It's an unsafe. It's hard to be in a situation like that and feel safe at all, especially like given all of the variables and everything. But she really stuck it to him. And so I'm proud of you, Elyse. You did good.
Me too. Ditto. Agreed.
Did you have thoughts about it?
I mean, I think you've touched on it perfectly. And I think realistically, I could have thoughts on it, but the thoughts that you have are going, that feels like maybe I'm saying it wrong. But I think it's more meaningful to hear your righteous anger at that than it is for me. Because of course, as a woman, I'm going to understand that what Terrence did was bad and it was stupid and it was wrong. But to hear a man say, Terrence, what the heck, dude, is just better, I think. Men holding men accountable is what we need in the world.
I don't disagree. I do also, though, think that your righteous anger is also justified and is worth vocalizing.
I'm righteously angry at you, Terrence. If that is your real name.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Who's to say? There's a poem that Elyse writes. I think it's titled More. I have a physical copy of the book. I lent it to my sister because I was so in love with it that I had to share it immediately.
We didn't address this until now, but I listen to books usually. I'm on Audible all the time. And so she listened to it again after having read it. I've listened to it now twice.
Yeah. So I usually physical copy. And then if it's a memoir like this, then I'll listen to the audio version as well, because I love to hear the person's own words coming out of their face. But she has this poem, and I wish I had the book so that I could make sure that I'm getting the title right. But I think it was called More, where the vibe I got was that she was trying to convince herself to stay in this relationship where she wanted more, but more would be too much. I want to know, have you ever felt like you were trying to convince yourself to stay in a relationship?
I've been in 3 total relationships.
Yes.
I'm going to say probably not, actually. So my first relationship was, freshman year of college, and there unfortunately wasn't like a whole lot of substance, I think, to that relationship. We had common moral values, and that was obviously good. But then I went off on my mission, and she found somebody else and got married, which is awesome. And that was that. My second relationship post-mission, and I did a lot of growing, I think, during that relationship in like so many different categories. And so it was really good for me. I hope it was good for her. I hope it was. But even like, there were a lot of, again, very similar moral values, but also like a lot of kind of differences of opinions on how like certain things should be and what our future could potentially look like. And so there was, I guess a little bit of like trying to convince myself that it could work out, but it also like, it was never to the point where I was like, well, but this is gonna be forever. And so like, I have to figure it out. It was more like, we're still working on this and we're still seeing if this is gonna work. We haven't set anything in stone. I never proposed. We talked about marriage as a hypothetical, as I think any regular couple with that much time together would. But I wouldn't say that I was like really, really entrenched in trying to convince myself that it was going to work out. I was seeing where it was going to go, and I was enjoying it along the way. And I was definitely enjoying the personal growth that I was getting, the connection that I had to this really incredible individual. And that's that. Yeah. I think when it came time to end things, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I've been trying to make it work and it's just not gonna work. It was other reasons that I won't get into right now.
Fair enough.
What about you?
I mean, the answer.
You've had like more than 3 relationships.
I have had more. A couple more than 3 relationships.
Like 8 more?
10 more?
10 more? Okay. I always go between 11 and 13.
Yeah. You were at least you're my lucky number 13. I've kissed 13 boys to men.
One.
You won. You did it. I am the prize.
It's about as good as prizes get.
It's true. I think I have done a lot of convincing myself to stay in relationships, way more than I should have. I think Elyse has a quote She said, I am so accustomed to being treated like someone's secret. I can't fathom being loved out in the open for everyone to see. And I think that there was very much the sense that I wasn't prepared to be loved the way that maybe I deserved or whatever. And so there was a lot of convincing myself that what I had was enough, including in the relationship just prior to you, the fiancé-ship. What do you call that? The engagement? The engagement.
I was also struggling for the word.
Where, you know, this was a good man and I loved him and there were a lot of positives, but at the end of the day, I knew that I deserved more. I knew that there was more out there. And I'm really, really grateful that I got to the point where I cut that off. It was 3 weeks before the wedding, guys. Like,
It's pretty close.
nick of time. My parents were like, we're sending out invitations. And I was like,
Like 1,000 of them or whatever.
yeah, maybe don't. Have you considered maybe not doing that? And I spent then the next like 2 days trying to convince myself. And at the end of the day, it wasn't right. And so I had to break things off. And luckily was in a position to do that. But yeah, I spent a lot of time.
It's interesting because she also talks about in the book a few different situations where she's in, I want to make sure I get like the wording of this right, where she's in relationships where she basically is the downfall of the relationship. I'm trying to think of like how she described it, and you probably could describe it better than me. And I thought it was really interesting because it's like she panics because of, I guess, maybe how good things are, or maybe how good she feels, or I don't know what exactly. And as a result of that panic, she takes action that ends the relationship in some kind of way. And I wanted to know, do you relate?
Of course I relate. I mean, I think our relationship is a really interesting example of, I came in hard and fast with you, where I was just like, here is everything that's wrong with me. Here is every relationship that I've been in. Here is like at least tastes of my trauma. We didn't get deep into my trauma right away, but I was like, there's trauma.
Yeah.
There's stuff. Here's all of the worst parts of me. And if you don't want it, great, cool, leave then. Which obviously I didn't feel because I was so attached to you from the very beginning.
You didn't feel, but you definitely gave the impression that you were feeling. Like, I very much felt like you felt like, okay, I'm going to tell him all of this stuff. And if it's too much for him, then that's okay. And I'm good because like, I'm at peace with it. Like that was the sense that I got from you.
Which was definitely the facade that I was putting on. I would have been devastated if you couldn't have loved me.
Glad it worked out.
Me too. Me too. I mean, I would have been okay, I think. I would have been devastated if you couldn't care about me. Love me is maybe strong, but from the very first meeting that we had, I felt such a sense that you were going to be a part of my life forever, that you were going to be important. And I was fully willing to accept you as a friend, as my husband, as whatever I could get out of you, because you were just so good. And so there was a fear that I would grow so attached to you, and then something would come out about me that would make you decide that you didn't want to be around me. And the longer that period of time was, the more it was going to hurt when you left. And so I threw everything. And like, I think back, how many times did you see me like full on weeping before we were even in a relationship?
It's a lot.
It was a lot. And I was just like, here is the messy everything. And I think to some extent that was, you know, I'm not a physical runner like Elyse is, but I think that was my way of creating space, or at least attempting to. But I think you, like Jonas, were like, screw your space. Screw it. Whatever. Like,
I think I saw in you something that maybe you didn't see in yourself, where I felt like you thought you were on like this shaky ground or something. Like you were this really beat up tree that someone had come and shaken all your leaves off and probably like hit you with a stick and all of this stuff, right? And I saw all of that, and I think, one, I knew that, like, as with trees, if you don't like outright kill it, it's usually made stronger from those experiences. But also, as with trees, you had a really strong root system. And it's a root system that I feel like you didn't, and still sometimes don't necessarily see as being a thing, but you do. And it's something that, like, I appreciate about you. And I think that I'm eternally grateful that I was able to recognize that early on, so that I could kind of see through all of the sobbing and all of the like trauma dumping and all of that stuff and be like, okay, but she's not talking about all of this stuff because there is a root problem. In fact, if anything, she's talking about this stuff because there is like root value there, because you have root value.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a tree, baby. With my root value. My love, you struggle with secondhand embarrassment in a way that, like, I've never seen before, where, like, you physically cannot handle it. When Elyse meets Jonas for the second time, he has a beard, and she instinctively touches it. Tell me what your thoughts were as you read her experience with this, or listened to, I guess.
So a lot of what you're bringing up with like the struggles that I have with secondhand embarrassment are because you've seen me watch The Office, and I can't handle The Office. There's so many things that, so many characters, but I think specifically and particularly Michael Scott, like, does that just sets my teeth on edge, and I just feel such secondhand embarrassment for everyone involved. And I've been trying to figure out exactly why I don't feel that for this story, like, at all. Maybe it's the fact that it's like real people and it's honest mistakes, and it's not a TV show that is specifically written to set my teeth on edge. I'm not really sure. Or maybe it's the fact that like she breaks it down so much, right? Because she goes into like her points of like acceptable beard touching and like the number of times it can happen, and then with permission and like asking for permission and, you know, all of that stuff. And she's also like, which is also very funny, right? And so she does address it. A lot of the like Office stuff is like something super awkward happens and then like nobody addresses it. And I'm like, we can't just move on. I can't move on from this at all. Like it can't happen. It's not going to happen. And so I don't feel it really for this.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Were there any moments in the book where you just like felt overwhelmed by cringe?
White button up. I think once I finally realized what was going on, there was a fair amount of that, but there also was like well, it took me this long to figure it out. It took her a little bit longer to figure it out. And so there's some allowance there. And then just like so many questions about like, how does what he said, which was like, you know, I'm cheap or whatever, like, how does that, you can't say that that's like objectively identifiable as like what services he was offering or whatever. And so like it really felt like an honest mistake. And then she was still, again, able to break it down, and even made a joke about like having now another kind of glance that she and her friend could give each other in specifically exactly that situation. But I think like I definitely felt more of it in that part of the book than any other part of the book, including the beard touch.
Okay. Good to know. I would love to know whether you see or saw similarities between Elyse and I as you read this book. Because I felt in a lot of ways like, obviously the individual circumstances and everything were very different than my own life experiences. But in so many ways felt like who I am was written in between these pages. Like, but I'm curious whether you saw me in the book at all.
We've talked about a couple of them so far. Some of the ones that we haven't talked about that I definitely noticed is just like her love of literature. You know, she at the, I think, end does her acknowledgments and she's like, I just want to thank like books, like all of them, like literature everywhere, which was a very you thing to say, I feel like, because if somebody asked you to like thank your like favorite author or series of books or even like genre of book, you'd be like, no, I can't. Like, it's all of them, basically. All of them. And so I loved that. It felt like there was definitely a relation there between her and you. I'm trying to think of other examples. It's interesting because, like, going into this, we were familiar, I think, with Elyse's like social media channel and everything, and kind of like her personality and a lot of the stories that she's already told. And you've already talked about how much you relate to her so much, and it's kind of helped me to understand better who you are, because I'm seeing this other individual and this like adjacent-ish personality and everything. And so I knew going into it that like, okay, some of this is going to help me understand how Elizabeth thinks, the ways that her brain can kind of like go off on a tangent and everything. And it feels exhausting in a lot of situations. The most exhausting for me, I think, was the, is it hospital sheets? Is that what it's called?
Hospital corners.
Hospital corners. She goes into that, and that's actually a part that I remember seeing in the physical copy that you had and being like, this makes more sense as a physical copy book item than it does in an audiobook. Because in the audiobook, I got lost all over the place so much, and that was hard. There also, though, was another, there was a thing there that I feel like you maybe relate to, or maybe you don't think that you relate to, but she has that little tidbit in there about like a certain someone. And I think she starts off like, to whom it may not concern or something.
Oh my gosh. We haven't talked about that chapter, and that's maybe my favorite chapter in the book. It's
so good. Like, Elyse, you did such a good job with this, where you simultaneously addressed and did not address the situation and this person, how they do and do not affect you in any kind of way. And you also you dissed them, but you were also like so respectful about it. And I think that was like super impressive, because we've all heard like diss tracks. We've all heard like stories where somebody says like, so-and-so did this to me and like they're dead to me and like I'd burn them alive if I could, or, you know, whatever. And like you simultaneously like, I felt like I saw you compartmentalize this person in your life and then just like make them disappear. And I was just like, man, wish I could do that. I really don't have any enemies. I don't know who I would do that for or anything, but like there are moments I think that like, that I do wish that I could like put it away. And I'm sure that like her ability to do that comes with like having processed this person and their influence on her life like a lot, and possibly multiple people for all we know, honestly, where she's just like, and everyone else, you're in this chapter. What were your thoughts?
Sorry, I got distracted by how parasocial you just got, where you're like, Elyse, I'm sure you're watching this. I'm talking directly to you. And I just really liked it. I don't know. Yeah. It was cute. It was fun. I mean, like you said, we've talked a lot about the similarities between Elyse and I. Sometimes like I feel weirdly similar. Like we have curly hair, both of us. And that's like such like a dumb one.
I don't think it's dumb.
I mean,
it defines a lot of your daily routine.
Yeah.
You have certain physical touch points that are probably very similar to her physical touch points. And so there's like a slice of your life that you're living in tandem with this other person.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, it's in tandem with like a bunch of other people, but like specifically her too.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there is a piece of my soul that Elyse speaks to. And she puts words to thoughts and feelings that I have had that I have never been able to verbalize, and like gives me language then to define it, to be able to express it, to be able to move forward. And I don't know. I feel really similar to Elyse. Again, our experiences have been really different and they look totally different, but the feelings that we might feel in a given moment are very different or are very similar. Except for, and we talked a little bit about this, not here with you guys, but we talked a little bit about this earlier. One way that I don't relate to Elyse is that I feel like she has a lot of social anxiety about relationships. Whereas that was like the domain that I just rocked. I feel like I assumed that I was socially apt because my flirting game was on point, because I felt like I could get boys to fall in love with me, in like with me. I don't know. I could get people to like me. I could put on the persona, and realistically, even just saying that I put on a persona means that I wasn't as socially comfortable as I thought I was. But relationships, I felt like I got the social cues, I got all of that, versus my friendships, I didn't know how necessarily, and still struggle sometimes to know how to maintain friendships, because I think it's really easy. It was really easy. I don't date anymore, just to clarify. It was really easy when dating to be like, the end goal of this is that you love me forever. We're together forever. And that's what we're going for. I think with friendships, it's a lot harder because I'm like, I would love to be your friend forever, but what is tying us together? Like, what is the purpose of it? Not the purpose. The purpose is companionship and brotherhood, and I don't know. I'm turning French.
Fraternité, égalité, liberté.
Exactly. But I think I just struggled with that aspect with friendships more than I struggled with relationships. Whereas friendships seemed like she kind of knew where that realm was. She talks about her friends at Halloween. She talks about Marley. She talks about her pot smoking friend that she made in community college. She talks about Tess at some point. I think it's Tess, who she visits right before she goes to Kansas.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like she has all of these friends from throughout her life, and Sophie, who is the cigarette smoker, and like all of this, and like she still has anxiety about these relationships, but it does feel like she's able to maintain them. Whereas I don't think I've been single for more than 6 months since I was 14.
Wild.
and that it was easy for me to be and get into relationships. It wasn't necessarily like, were they all great? No. But I knew how to get into a relationship. I knew how theoretically to maintain a relationship. Versus friendships, I still am like, I want to be friends with this person. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. I struggle with that too.
Yeah. How do you relate or not relate to Elyse?
I feel like I mostly don't. Like, I'll have similar thought patterns, but they're not nearly to the like all-consuming level that those thought patterns appear to be Elyse. But actually, the funniest thing that I related to that I think I told you about was the 8-ball, where she gets this 8-ball, and it's like this big deal because
The
it's
magic 8-ball.
the magic 8-ball, because it's like maybe witchcraft for all she knows. Certainly, probably is witchcraft for all her mom knows, right? And it's like this very taboo thing, and she can't figure out what the right first question to ask is. And I was like, I am exactly that way. Like that, especially I think as a child, like if I was in that situation, even if I could come up with like what I thought was the right first question, if I got an answer that didn't like perfectly click with me, I would have been like, oh, that must not be the right first question. And so like, it hasn't even started yet. Like the magic is not engaged basically. But I would have been, I think like her, very hung up on like, oh, but like, are we gonna have pizza tomorrow? Well, no, it's not pizza day. You know, it's like kind of the example that she gives. And she kind of like almost rationalizes herself out of the magic in a way. And I think that's probably the way that I relate to her the very most.
That makes sense. That's your logical side. You're a very logical being.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we're going to talk about today. Thank you, first of all. You're the best. But also thank you guys for bearing with us. This is definitely kind of a more emotional deep dive than maybe we'll get with other books. But I think the purpose of a memoir is to find yourself in it, and to relate to other people's lived experiences. So I thought it was important to do that. I thought it was important to find ourselves and each other in this book. Yeah.
Thanks for spending time with us. And thank you, Elyse, for the book. It was awesome.
It was awesome. Thank you. We're all tight now. I don't know.
We'll catch y'all next time.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.